Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee or even a slushie. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Sam Owens. Sam is the founder of Sam's Career Talk, and he provides career coaching advice and services to help people land their dream jobs and thrive in them. Wouldn't that just be so nice? He's also the chief marketing officer at Frazzle, and he's worked for 3 multi-billion-dollar companies and is the author of a great book, so practical, so timely. I hate job interviews. Stop stressing, start performing, and get the job you want. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe. It's great to be here.
It's the first time that I'll do this show in about the time it takes to enjoy a slushie. So thank you for that.
Hey, of course.
Slushies are better than coffees, especially this time of the day.
That's right. I agree.
So what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew the difference 10 hours of practice could make for the next job interview. If they could just learn that I just have to put 10 hours. It's the same time it takes to drive, from where I live in Denver to, Omaha, maybe a little bit more. I just wish people knew the difference 10 hours could make in getting a job.
So these 10 hours really come down to the practice that we have to invest in this process. I feel like for a lot of people, the reason why they hate job interviews is because they feel maybe way too formal, or they offer preferential treatment to those who have certain qualities like extroversion or confidence. You argue, though, that really the key to succeeding in these interviews is not personality, it's practice and preparation. Tell us more about that.
That's right. 10 hours of preparation. Their job interviewing is a skill. And some of the myths people tell themselves is exactly what you mentioned. Well, I wasn't qualified. That's not true. They selected you for a job interview, which means you're qualified. Well, if this is really not my thing, I don't know if I want the job. Okay, well, that's fine. Why don't you be wishy-washy after you have a job offer in your hand? But until then, let's be all in. So there's all these things we tell ourselves kind of as protection mechanisms, maybe excuses to say, well, yeah, I don't really need to prepare. It's just kind of work, or it's not going to work. And the truth is, job interviewing is just like anything else. A golf swing, a football throw, it's a learned skill that anyone can learn.
Yeah, and we can't just rely on our experiences and expertise to carry us. It really comes down to that preparation.
That's right. Or your charisma. Some people think, well, I'm really good at talking to people, so I'll be fine. It's the difference between having good rhythm and knowing the steps to the waltz, right? Some people are charismatic, but do they know actually how to structure their answers in the way that interviewers are looking for? And that's the difference. You might be charismatic and that can serve you well, but that doesn't mean when someone says, tell me about a time when you exhibited leadership, that you're going to be able to just pop off a super good answer all of a sudden.
So break that down for me, that 10 hours, because it does seem a little bit formidable, at least at first. Where do you start in this preparation process?
You start by researching the company. Part 1 is where you're talking to people, researching stuff like that, just getting information about the company. That's probably, 2-3 hours. Next step is you're developing your power stories, and you're anticipating question types based on the job description. And then you're kind of writing down your 5 to 10 power examples that you have that demonstrate you have the skills for the job. And then like the next 4 or 5 hours, you're spending practicing out loud, either to yourself in the mirror, maybe at first, and then after that to someone else, either a coach or even a peer that will hold you accountable. So preparation, kind of answer development, and then practice.
So let's go back to that prep stage for a moment, because you said something in the book that I thought was pretty interesting. We spend all this time trying to do intel on these companies, but we don't do the most logical thing, and that's to reach out to people who are inside these companies already, and to set up almost like a pre-interview before we interview with the company with these individuals. Why is that a good idea?
Yeah, in the book, it's titled Get Inside Information. And I give the example of like an inside trader in the financial world who was in prison because he got inside information and he placed trades based off of it. And I tell the reader that you should try to be more like this person, like not in the finance sense, but in the sense that when you're interviewing for a job, getting inside information, if you do it the right way, it's not illegal, it's not unethical. In fact, it's even encouraged. And so if I'm preparing for a job, other than the people who are going to interview me, I want to find out anyone who knows anything about the company, maybe works for the company, used to work for the company, anything. And I usually just say, hey, I'm interviewing for this company and I just want to learn more about it and how I can be successful. And if you sit back and listen, you will get a treasure trove of information that will help you in the interview. Many times they'll tell you stuff they shouldn't even tell you, but they'll just start talking because they want to be helpful. And it's going to be way more valuable than if you're researching like the company's 10K or something like that on Yahoo Finance or something like that to try to find some sort of nugget. Talk to the people who are actually working there. You'll learn about the culture. You'll learn about the interview process. You'll learn about what it's like to work there. All of that is going to help you succeed and develop way better answers to your questions than just on your laptop or phone.
Yeah. So take those first few hours of this process and get the value added that comes with this.
That's right. Get
Yeah.
off the laptop and get on the phone and start talking to people.
So when it comes to these power stories and really coming up with concrete examples, is there a particular format that you think would be helpful for people to follow when they're crafting these examples of their expertise in action?
Yeah, so you look at the job description, it's impossible to anticipate and have a perfect story for every single question because there are thousands of questions you could be asked. But if you look at the job description, you'll see that there are probably a handful of question types you'll be asked or a handful of skills that they're trying to assess. So if you look at the job description and you can kind of clearly see, oh, they're looking for someone who is highly collaborative, they'll probably ask me a collaboration question. Then you go in and you say, all right, what are some examples in my prior experience where I demonstrated clear collaboration skills? A specific example, not just platitudes like, oh, I'm always collaborative and I love to collaborate, but specific examples of when you were collaborative. And you get 2 of those. And then you can take that story, you develop it. I like the SPAR format. You break it into situation, problem, action, result. You know, what was the situation? What kind of problem was there? What are the actions I took to solve the problem? And then afterwards, why did it work out wonderfully well? So that's kind of how I like to put them in that format. And then the nice thing is, once you have that power story, regardless of how they ask the question, they could ask, tell me about a time when you demonstrated collaboration, or they could say, what's your philosophy on collaboration? They could say all sorts of things, but you can recognize the question type and then craft your story and spin your story ever so slightly in different ways, depending on how the question is asked. You almost got to think like a politician, right? Like you're going to tell them what you want to tell them and what they want to know, even though their question might be slightly different.
Yeah. And as long as it's aligned with the information that's already being shared in the job description, you're probably in safe territory there.
Exactly. As long as you can recognize what skill they're trying to assess, you're in safe territory.
Okay. So now we're up to practice and the next chunk of hours in this process. So I like to say that practice doesn't make perfect, but it usually makes progress. So when
Good.
we've done that pre-work and we're practicing, is there a particular way that we ought to go about that? You mentioned doing it in a few different formats and different times and places. What's the secret sauce here?
Yeah, the secret sauce is to practice in such a way that simulates the real thing. So if you're having someone practice with you, you want to give them the job description, give them some potential question areas, but you don't want to know the exact questions you're going to be asked ahead of time. You don't want to stop in the middle of it like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'm not going to say that in the real thing. Let's do that one again. You want to go through the whole half hour, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever time you think it'll be. And you want it to be simulated. You want them to hold their feedback for the end so that you can feel not just what the questions are like, but what the intellectual and emotional taxes on you to be able to really get through that interview so you can build the muscle to do it when the real thing comes. And then one other thing I'd say, because I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but some people think that this might make you feel more robotic, like giving really structured answers and practice, like, oh, I want to be myself or whatever. It's actually the opposite. If you practice these concise answers, you'll feel more at ease to diverge a little bit and to free associate and to kind of be more conversational because you're so buttoned up on the foundation that now you're really comfortable. If you're not buttoned up on the foundation, you're just kind of scrambling in your mind. And so, yeah, maybe you won't come off as robotic, but you might ramble and you might struggle to recall all the things you want to say.
Yeah, that's good advice. So, does it matter who's actually leading the interview? I know sometimes these are held by recruiters, other times it's run by hiring managers. Should we modify our approach when dealing with one or the other?
I wouldn't say modify. I would just say that the HR person, that interview is going to be way easier than the hiring manager. Now, the HR person, all they're doing is deciding whether or not to pass you along. So it's not that it's going to be a cakewalk, but the hiring manager is deciding, do I want to hire this person? Do I want to work with this person? So the hiring manager interview, number one, is the one that matters the most. And number two, it's going to be harder. So if you are trying to budget your time, I recommend just being ready to go when the HR person calls you. But I do think there's room to say, all right, the HR interview went great. It went good. I could have improved on a couple things, but I got passed on. Don't take that as, oh, I'm going to get the job. Take that as, now I have an opportunity to really double down and prepare because this next interview is going to be harder.
Post interview, what are your best pieces of advice for people in terms of the follow up process, in terms of expressing gratitude and signaling interest and asking follow ups? What's the best way to go about that?
One of the biggest questions I get from the clients I coach is, hey, Sam, I had an interview. It went great. Now it's been a week and they haven't gotten back to me yet. What do I do? Do I follow up? Do I not follow up? And my question is always the same, which is, well, did you agree in the interview to a time when they would get back to you? And a lot of times that answer is no. And it's like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. So after every interview, I think it's important to just ask for next steps, so that week goes by, they haven't got back to you. It's very easy to say, hey, great to talk to you again. We talked about a week, and so I'm just following up with you based on our last conversation. That's one little piece. Another, I'm a big fan of handwritten notes, thanking people. I'm a big fan. If there's anyone that you would talk to that's familiar with the company, I really like the idea of asking them to send the hiring manager a note if they can, to say, oh, by the way, I really like this person. Because just imagine you're a hiring manager and you just interviewed someone. You're like, it was good. It was an interview, but it was only an hour. And then you get a note in your inbox from someone you trust that says, oh, by the way, Joe is great. Uh, you know, I know him personally. Either I've worked with him, never worked with him, but he's still great. I mean, that just de-risks the whole thing for the hiring manager. So if you can get people to pile on, you're going to be in much better shape.
So, interview is winding down, and now it's time for that universal question of, do you have any other questions for me? I
Yeah.
hate that question, but what do you do with that? I mean, is there a certain approach that you find works better just so that it ends on a high note and not flops?
So there's kind of three parts to this closing out the interview. The first is when if there's time for questions, I try to ask a question that they are uniquely qualified to answer and that I genuinely want to know about. Those two things will keep you from asking weird questions like something that tries to make you look smart but is kind of weird, or something that you really want to know but is like probably better to ask after you have an offer. It's like, hey, tell me about the culture, tell me about what your biggest business challenges are, stuff like that. So if there's time to ask questions, I think that's great. The next thing I like to ask finally is, are there any things I can clarify for you about my candidacy, or is there any questions that you still have lingering that I can clarify for you? That gives them an opportunity just to say, well, yeah, there is this one thing or whatever, kind of, allows them to ask those questions. And then after I do that, I just want to reiterate how thrilled I am about this opportunity. And I'm just more excited about it now than I was at the beginning of the interview. And I'm just super excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, so you turn the question into a question and also an expression of gratitude.
That's right.
Smart.
Your final statement is just like, look, I love this. Yeah, let's do this.
The book is I Hate Job Interviews, and the author, and I think you'll like the pro tips that he shared with us today, is Sam Owens. Sam, thanks for sharing your wish with
Thanks,
us today.
Joe.